Today on the show, a woman loses her business after her daughter's offhanded comments on social media, which begs the question, can our ethics keep up with technology? Our guest on the show is rock drumming legend of Skid Row and Saigon Kick fame, Phil Varone. He talks about his time on the road with Kiss and competing with Gene Simmons for the attention of female fans, his time as an actor and stand-up comic, and why he started a radio station.
Hey, you know where I can get a used antenna?
Yes, right over here, next to this bridge I think you'd like to purchase as well.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go!
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So have you ever felt like our ethics, or maybe even our laws, can't keep up with technology as it works here? I'll give you a perfect example. If you, in many states in this country of ours, if you're on your phone while you're driving, that's illegal. That's like a $250 ticket. If you go to adjust your phone, if you go to read something on your phone, or if you're seen to be operating your phone while you are in a moving vehicle and a cop catches you, in many parts of America, like I said, that's a $250 ticket. Now, enter the smartwatch. And I was asking a buddy of mine about this the other day. He's like, check this out. Got a smartwatch. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. I was like, what does it do? He's like, well, you know, I can get emails and text messages and everything that I get on my phone, I can get on my watch now, ostensibly. I get all these notifications on my watch. I was like, so can you read email on your watch? He was like, yeah, I can totally read email on my watch. I was like, what about while you're driving? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, your hands are at 10 and 2, which leaves your wrist exposed, which means you could technically read an email on your watch while you're driving, which we all know is a giant no-no and could land you with a huge ticket. What are the rules on that? And he's like, you know, I don't know. And I was like, seems like technology is moving a little faster than ethics and law and things of that nature can keep up with that in this instance. And he was like, you're absolutely right. I was like, do you read text messages and emails while you drive? And he was like, actually, yeah, I kind of do. I was like, what about your phone? He was like, it's so built into my head that texting and driving is absolutely the wrong thing to do, that I view looking at my phone or touching at my phone while I drive. I've got a kid, and that's not a safe thing to do. I'm not texting and driving with my kid in the car. Absolutely not. I was like, but you didn't even think about it when you started reading these text messages and these emails on your watch whilst you're driving. He's like, I did not. He's like, damn, now I'm going to have to turn my watch upside down while I drive so I'm not distracted. And I was like, interesting. I remember another occasion, and this is going back. This is a much more bang the rocks together version of the internet and technology. But I remember the first time I felt like we couldn't keep up. I was living in Long Island, in Bayville. My band was making an album up the road in Glen Cove, and we'd sort of been posted up in this house whilst we were going back and forth from the studio. And as it turns out, one of the recording engineers that was working on our record lived in the little cottage. It was like a guest house that was part of the whole rental, and he lived in a cottage across from us. So we were always over at his place. We were always sort of like working in his little home studio, having cups of coffee in the morning before going into the studio to make noise and things of that nature. And I remember he was one of the first people that really, really showed me what could be accomplished with an America Online Instant Messenger account and some chat rooms. I walked in to his computer one day, looked at his screen, and saw that his friends were organized into categories, one of which was fresh meat. I was like, fresh meat, you say? He was like, man, it is the best. He was like, I can come home at 5. I can be in a chat room by 5:30. I can be talking to a girl by 6. I can be meeting her at 7. I can be back here by 9 o'clock, plowing away happily. And I was just like, it seems like you're not really thinking this through. He's like, what's to think through? Fresh meat, happy times for me. And I was like, that's very interesting. And up to that point, not everybody knew you could get on the internet and meet people for intimate physical encounters. And I remember talking to him. I was like, this seems like not a good idea. He's like, What do you mean not a good idea? Have you not seen the the evidence? Do you not see the smile on my face? Do you not see that I am satisfied and happy in ways that I wasn't satisfied and happy before I got an internet connection at my home? I was like, mark my words, my friend, nothing good will come of this. He was like, what? I was like, nothing good will come of this. Anyways, cut to, we're finishing up our record and we're getting ready to move out. And he's moving out as well. I was like, why are you moving out? This place is the best. He was like, well, a lot of those girls I was meeting from the internet, they keep showing up. I don't know if I was like, oh, that's what the screaming on the lawn was all about the other night. He was like, yeah, that was that. I hadn't been vetting them properly before I got into these situations. That's a problem. I hadn't been vetting them. And I was like, cool. I'm helping him move. He's like, don't worry about the couch. I was like, why not? You got the coolest couch ever. I remember the head of our record label just gave it to him. He was the only one with a living room big enough to fit this massive, luxurious couch. And I was like, why wouldn't you want to take the couch with you? He's like, turn that cushion over. And there was a giant burn mark on it. And he was like, yeah, that one that was screaming on the lawn, she set my couch on fire. And I felt bad for the guy. But the bottom line is, we weren't ethically evolved enough yet to deal with the technology we'd been given.
Real radio.
104.1. Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So if you're just joining us, a buddy of mine, telling you the story of a buddy of mine back in the day who he was the first person that really illustrated the fact that technology was moving quicker than we knew what to do with intellectually and ethically, and in some cases legally. Technology is moving faster than we can cope with. And my buddy back in the day, when AOL chat rooms were the thing, managed to meet many females for fun encounters at his place on the internet. I remember telling him nothing good would ever come of this. He's like, I'm so happy. I used to have a hard time meeting girls. The internet has made it amazing. And then when we all went to move out, it was sort of like this roommate situation where he lived in the guest house to the house that my band was renting. He was like, it's time for me to move. Too many girls from the internet know where I live. That screaming on the lawn the other night, that same girl set my couch on fire. I need to get out of here. And it wasn't that the guy didn't exercise common sense. I mean, I did tell him nothing good would come of this. But like I said, we as a species at that point in 1998 or whenever the hell it was, we weren't ethically and sociologically evolved enough yet to deal with the technology that we've been given. Now, if you talk to super producer to the stars, Barry Funkhauser, he's aware of all the dating apps and all the steps that lie between you and someone potentially psychotic setting your couch on fire, like happened to my friend.
Oh, it's happened.
So in some ways we've caught up to the tech, but it just keeps going. And the thing that made me think of all this was, well, a lack of cognizance about what technology could mean caused one poor woman to lose her business. A Massachusetts mother had to close her coffee shop after her daughter, who worked as a manager at the shop, refused to host a coffee with a cop evening. It's from the Daily Mail. This woman, Kata Mele, decided to close the White Rose Coffee House in Lynn, Massachusetts, just a week after the controversy erupted. Only took a week to shut down all of her hopes and dreams and blood, sweat, and tears. And it all started when her 23-year-old daughter, Sophie, who works as a manager at the coffee house, said on Facebook that the cafe would never host a coffee with a cop event, and went on to call police racists and bullies, and in the subsequent discussion thread wrote, I will gladly host a Meet an Ex-Con or Meet the Impoverished Minority Community event. I'm not going to promote any pro-police event because I'm adamantly anti-police. Now, look, this is not a debate about how you feel about law enforcement. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that she's 23 years old, and her views on this situation will probably evolve in some way, shape, or form moving forward. But the point of it is The remarks spread like wildfire across the interwebs, locally and nationally, and sparked this humongous backlash. Many took issue with the anti-police sentiment, leaving scathing online reviews for the coffee house. The mom said she fired Sophie, fired her daughter, and wrote an apology letter that was published by the local newspaper. With business dwindling, though, the damage was done. The online abuse showed no signs of letting up. She decided she had no other choice but to close the shop. She said, "I would just say that my daughter had every right to say something as stupid as she said. Every American has the right to say something as stupid as she said. I don't agree with what she said. It's not my opinion." And what do we take from this? I guess it means that now, more than ever before, you, me, all of us, we all need to think about the consequences of our actions. And hopefully we learn. Hopefully we learn before it's too late. All right, Funkhauser, we are joined again today by none other than Phil Verone, superstar drummer, filmmaker, comedian, and, well, let's run down your list of achievements, Phil. You were the drummer in Saigon Kick.
I was.
You hit me in the face with a drumstick at the Marquee Club in London when I was 12.
25 years ago.
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if you caught the show yesterday when Phil was on, but we had an interesting full circle moment. We'll run that down again, but let's just get to your considerable list of achievements. You were a drummer in Saigon Kick. You were also in Skid Row for a little while.
I was, for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And what's the band you're in now?
It's with Jakey Lee, a guitar player. Mm-hmm. It's called Red Dragon Cartel.
Jakey Lee of Ozzy and Badlands fame, and now you're in his band. That's awesome. And not only that, you're a bit of a Gen XY renaissance dude. You've acted. You had a scene in Californication. You played a guy under a pile of naked females, correct?
Yes, that was a method acting. I had to dig deep. The funny story about that was Dave Duchovny was in the scene with me, and his brother was directing the scene. And because I had my one line, I was a principal technically, so they had a stand-in for me, which was very funny. So they were blocking the shot and stuff, and the director said, "Hey Phil, just lay down on the bed real quick. I just want to, we want to get the shot." And so the girls laid on me. I had like 5 or 6 girls laying on me, and he goes, "Okay, Phil, get up. Let's bring the stand-in." I went, "Oh no, you don't. We don't need a stand-in." And like the whole crew started cracking. I'm like,
I was in Skid Row.
I was like, I am going nowhere.
This is done.
Exactly. I said, I have 5, 6 women on me. Why would I get up right now? I'm laying on a bed. I'm very comfortable. They're half dressed. Why would you do this to me? Make me get up. So I ended up just staying there while they blocked the shot and stuff. So it was actually very funny.
How do you go from being the drummer in Skid Row to acting in Californication? How is this a thing? Oh, that will be our tease. We'll get to that next with Phil Verone. Thank you so much for hanging out.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
So our guest in the studio today would be Phil Verone, drummer of Skid Row fame, also Red Dragon Cartel with Jakey Lee, formerly of Ozzy and Badlands fame. Also spent some time in Skid Row. So how did you go from being like rock drummer extraordinaire, getting all the very best gigs on the face of the planet, to being an actor in Californication, where you were required to do the method acting of being on a bed underneath a pile of willing groupies?
I mean, using the word actor, I think we're stretching it a bit. let's slow down on that. No, when I moved to Los Angeles in 2006, I wanted to do acting and stand-up comedy, and I wrote as well. I was writing scripts, and I wrote a book as well. I just wanted to try other stuff other than drumming. I mean, I love drumming and I love music, but after so many years in it and so much abuse to my body, I wanted to kind of do something different and, get out from behind the drums and be up there by myself. I mean, that's why I did stand-up comedy. It's you versus the world, basically.
Stand-up comedy, I always look at it as like the most incredible discipline. I've got friends that are pro stand-up comics and people that come on the show, and it's one of those things where it is a pass-fail situation, and you've got nobody to blame but yourself. You are 100% independent, and you're taking your life and your destiny in your own hands, because it's you, a microphone, thoughts from your head, and your ability to connect with that audience, and it ends there. Like, I've talked to stand-up folks about this. Like, there's plenty of times I wish I could blame it on the bass player, but it's just you. It starts and ends with you. It's a very brave thing for you to do.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it was the coolest and the scariest thing I've ever done, to be honest with you. I remember the first show I did. I had brought my girlfriend at the time, who was a famous actress, comedy actress, and improv person, and she came to the gig with me, and that walk to the stage, I'm still walking. That's how long that walk was, and it was only 20 feet. It was like walking the plank. And I got on stage. I did 5 minutes and 10 seconds, and then it was over. And I think the biggest fear for anybody, comedy-wise, is always bombing. Like you don't want to bomb. And Dave Chappelle said it the best. He goes, "You know what happened after I bombed?" He goes, "I got back up on stage the next day. Nothing happened." And I think when you think about it that way, and you know that there's going to be times that you're not funny, there's going to be times you are funny. The art of it is trying to make it all funny, and that's what the greats do. I enjoyed my 3.5 years doing stand up, and in that time, I hosted a show at the Improv called the Sex, Stand Up, and Rock and Roll Show, and on that show, I showcased all the huge comics that are on now, because comedy is like a class. It's like going to school. So the day I started comedy in 2006, so 12 years later, everybody I started comedy with are huge stars. I mean, huge stars now. And they're still my friends. And, we kind of goof on each other, because I say, yeah, you were the funny one. I went back to drums, and yeah, but that's what I wanted it for. I knew I wasn't going to be a comedian. That's the title of comedian is a pretty respectful thing. You got to plant your feet on the stage, and you got to do an hour of solid material to call yourself a comedian, like a paid comedian. And those guys that do that, I have such respect for them. And I recommend to anybody, go up and do 5 minutes just for once in your life. It's like skydiving. It's one of those things that you think you should have on your bucket list, because it changes your life. And it made mine better by doing that. And it killed fears. It made me a better performer. It made me a better host. And now I'm just, I love getting up in front of people and getting on the mic and having fun. So it was definitely a very positive experience for me.
I think there's that famous Seinfeld bit where he said that in terms of fears, like the number one fear is public speaking.
Yes.
The second biggest fear is death. And he was like, death is number 2. That means at your average funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. And it's like,
it's
so
very
it
true.
really is. Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And but the fact that, you can do that, I think you're right. I think that is, see, for me, public speaking has never been that big of a deal. But I know folks that, oh man, it's like the be all end all. If I can just get up in front of this room full of 20 people and give this sales presentation and not just melt into a pool of sweat and regret by the end of it, that's a major, major achievement. So yeah, no, it's incredible. It's incredible. I did stand-up comedy once, and I did it on a dare of one of my stand-up comic buddies. We hosted a night in Houston, and we're all sort of hanging out. And he was like, I've heard you on the radio. Funny. You should go be funny. And I was like, it's not really my thing. He's like, just come to the open mic night. You should do it. And I was like, nah, thank you, but no, I appreciate it. I'd never really been a goal of mine. And he was like, but I'm hosting one tonight at wherever it is, Yuck Yucks or something. And then his other stand-up buddy goes, oh, no, not tonight. That is not that's not something for beginners. He couldn't handle tonight. I was like, and that was a red rag to a bull. I was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Pass me the microphone. And
Exactly.
I did 5 minutes, and it was okay. But it was, I felt, they were like, you did amazing. You actually got some laughs. I was like, really? And I felt horrifying and terrible the whole time. He's like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Like 9 times out of 10 is going to be horrifying and terrible. Then the 10th time, you're going to have this incredible set that keeps you going through the other 9 times that you inevitably bomb. It's a great sort of, I guess it really is good for humility.
Absolutely.
Really is,
no, that's why I say to do it. It's absolutely, it's reality fast, and I always find that people say, the reason why I started comedy is because my buddy Craig Gass told me I should.
Sure.
And Craig is hysterical, does these great voices. And him and I, every time he came out to see us play, when I was with Skid Row, I would just do bits with him, and I would he would do Gene Simmons, I would do Paul Stanley, that's what we used to do. And he's like, you got to do stand up. But it's different when you make your friends laugh. It's kind of like, the American Idol thing. Oh, she sings good in the shower. But then you get on stage and, and it's a catastrophe. So luckily, it wasn't that much of a catastrophe because I was used to being on stage. But like you said earlier, I mean, it's you versus microphone versus the crowd. And one is the loneliest number, to quote the Three Dog Night, when you're up there, man. And but there's nothing better than a laugh, I have to say. I mean, when you think about what are those moments where you hear a laugh, it's like almost orgasmic, if you will. It's something special. Yeah, it's like that horn laugh that everybody's laughing. That's an incredible sound. And I look forward to getting up back on stage and doing some hosting and possibly maybe even doing a little more stand up later on. I mean, Vegas has a lot of great places, and I have 5 minutes. I can go up and have some fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I mean, what your abilities in that particular arena are well suited to the fact that you are starting up your next time you're in Vegas, you should be able to listen to Phil's radio station, correct? That's what super producer to the stars, Barry Funkhauser, is out there doing, right? He's helping you kind of
being a dork.
Set up shop.
His excitement. I told him already I have separation anxiety because I know he's leaving today.
See, this is my mic. You turn this on and up.
That's your mic.
Yeah, see, I will be gone after today, so you won't need to turn that on.
You mean I'm going to have to work
But
this?
for right now, you have to turn it on and up, yeah.
Okay.
But you can turn it off now.
Okay.
Go ahead and turn it.
How about now?
No, okay, it's on now?
Okay,
great.
and now off. Okay, thank you very much.
So well.
Thank you. Can I get a round of applause for the drummer and the faders, everyone? Put your hands together. Thank you very much. Good crowd here. We got a good crowd. It's a tight crowd, but it's a good crowd. No,
I have you mentioned briefly Skid Row. I've got a burning question about the guys in Skid Row, which I'll ask a little later on. But first, let me know how you go from stand-up comedian to Vegas radio station owner.
Well, that's a good question.
And rock star drummer in between.
Yeah.
Seems like you say yes a lot to life. And I'm sort of feeling as though we should all say yes a little bit more.
I think so. My philosophy in life is when I die, on the deathbed, you'd never want to go, man, I wish I would have just tried that. Some stuff, I still have stuff on my bucket list, like Heather Graham. She's on my bucket list. And, skydiving. And, but... Turn my mic on, he says.
Yeah, me too.
You too.
Okay, turn it off.
Okay, that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the funk, everyone. No, but yeah, that's how I kind of approach life, and especially now because I just turned 50. So I'm in Act 3 of my life. I call it 50 to death. I have my AARP card burning a hole in my pocket. I'm going to enjoy whatever time I have left. I hope it's long time, but I've lived a pretty fun life, and basically when I left Los Angeles, I came to Vegas, and I did a radio show on Sirius with Vivid Radio, and then after that, I kind of got the bug, and I just wanted to get back out on the air, so I got my partner here, Bonnie Mercado, and we're going at it and having some fun with it. So we start up soon. That's why Barry's here. Putting all the wiring together and figuring this stuff out, but I'm really, really looking forward to it, getting back out on the air.
If people want to listen when you do get up and running, how and when can they do that?
We're going to be 24/7, so it's unfilteredradio.com, The site is up right now. You can go to the site and check it out and see.
You'll have to spell filtered.
I was going to say, we should note that it's with a PH.
That's right. So it's
UN radio station.
UNPHILTERED, unfilteredradio.com. And it's funny too, because you see, that's the name of my book as well. Shameless plug. Go on, you can get it on Amazon. But Unfiltered is the name of my book, and it's spelt the same way. So it's natural that we would go to Unfiltered Radio, but really Unfiltered Radio means that we are pretty much, nothing is going to be off limits. We're uncut, we're unedited, we're uncensored. We're having a good time, and we have everything from we have live video as well, live streaming. So we have everybody from a show like mine that's called Big Mouth with Phil Varone, and then we have like a crazy right-wing Republican has a show called America. And I'm a First Amendment guy. I'm also an independent. So I feel that you can have the ability to talk, and there's listeners out there. So as a studio owner, station owner, I look at it that way. As an individual, no, I wouldn't listen to that stuff per se. Right. However, I watch, a lot of politics. Some of my favorite people like S.E. Cupp and, Bill Maher. It's like a spectrum of different, politics. But in general, I just find myself as an independent that makes decisions. So when it comes to the station, I would be a hypocrite not to allow certain shows on. And Bonnie and I both agreed on that. We're going to play music, different types of music, different type of talk radio. So we're really looking forward to it, making a dent.
Well, I think, big thing that you have going for you is you have the ability to tell stories about a lot of different parts of life that people would be curious about but don't know anything about. Like, I don't know if you know him, but handsome Dick Manitoba used to be in the Dictators. He does radio as well now, and it came out of the fact that he had a bar, I think. Manitoba's was a bar on the Lower East Side of New York City. And people would come there, and he would tell punk rock stories of having been in the Dictators, and that sort of, I think at some point, some folks from a radio station were listening to him tell his stories, and went, do you think you could do that in front of a microphone on the radio? And so, I mean, you have, like I said, a plethora of life experiences that people will want to hear about on Unfiltered Radio, where you can UNPHILTERED radio.com. So I do. Can we ask the Skid Row question?
Sure.
Well, first and foremost, how'd you wind up being the drummer in Skid Row?
Well, back in '96, I had left Saigon Kick. That was the first band that I had a record deal with out of Fort Lauderdale. And in '96, I was in a band with Rachel Bolan, who is the bass player for Skid Row, and we had a punk band called Prunella Scales, like the actress, and we did a record for Warner Japan. And we toured Japan, we toured some of the United States. And then around 2000, that was 97, 96, 97, 98, I did that band. I took 2 years off. I bought a restaurant. I went bankrupt. And then Rachel called me in 2000, and he goes, man, we're opening up for Kiss. Our drummer can't get into Canada because he has a murder charge. I was like, oh, that's nice.
What?
Yeah.
What? Which drummer had the murder charge?
Not Rob Affuso. Charlie Mills. I love Charlie. Charlie's a great guy. But apparently he stabbed his roommate in the chest with a knife. Listen, I'm not judging. I'm just saying.
I am. I would like to be very judgmental. You should avoid at all costs stabbing people in the chest with a knife, no matter what sort of impasse you come to in life. More on Phil Varone's story next.
Every day you're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
More AD on the radio.
Our guest on the show today is rock drumming legend, entrepreneur, radio station owner, restaurateur, actor, stand-up comic, and all things to all people, Phil Varone, who you might know from his work with Saigon Kick. You might know him from his new band Red Dragon Cartel with Jake E. Lee of Ozzy and it was Badlands, right?
Badlands, yeah.
I loved that record. I thought that was such a good record.
Great band. Great band. Oh my God.
What was the song? Dreams in the Dark?
What song wasn't good? I mean, it really, honestly, I mean, Ray Gillen on vocals, he had passed away, unfortunately, but man, just powerhouse singing, amazing band. Absolutely.
What was that one song? Winter's Call? Was it Winter's Call on that record?
I would have I'd have to look the record up. Because now you're going to get me penalized with my boss. I didn't know.
Right. Well, this is really, all right, so this is really kind of reaching here, but if I'm not very much mistaken, I want to say one of the guys from, there's a band that I was really, really into when I was a kid, when I was learning how to play drums. I was like, everybody in this band is so incredible. This band Racer X. It wasn't one of the guys from Racer X in Badlands, but did something different. Like he was a bass player in Racer X, but he wound up being the guitarist or the second guitar player in Badlands or played drums. No, it was a singer in Racer X, was the drummer in Badlands. I'm almost positive of it.
Wow.
I'm almost positive. And if like I said, we out-trunked Eddie Trunk on this one today, if I'm correct on that.
I had no idea it was going to be on Jeopardy today. I appreciate it.
Funkhauser, can you fact check? Was the singer in Racer X the drummer in Badlands?
Oh, let me see.
Whilst we continue our conversation, you can just tell me if I'm right or wrong on this one. But so you wind up playing drums in Skid Row because there's a pending murder charge.
A pending murder charge.
Skid Row are opening up for Kiss.
Yeah.
The drummer of Skid Row, who you said was a nice individual that had made the silly mistake of stabbing his roommate in the chest, was not allowed into Canada for that reason. So you got the call, hey, can you come and play with Skid Row as we open up for Kiss in the land of moose and unnatural fondnesses for them?
Yes.
And away you went.
I did. I had about 3 days to learn 24 songs, roughly. Luckily, I was, a fan of Skid Row. Of course, I've known those guys. At this point, I'd known the whole band for about 10 years, and I was a fan of the band before I met them. I mean, who didn't love those records? So I kind of had an idea how to play this stuff. I flew into North Dakota. I watched.
Oh wait! Breaking news. Yes, you are correct. Yes.
Wow.
Jeff Martin.
Yeah.
He was a singer and drummer for Surgical Steel, Racer X, Leatherwolf, and he played drums for Badlands, Blindside Blues Band, and Red Sea.
Yeah, and let me add a great drummer. Great drummer. Yeah, amazing drummer. But so I don't even where was. Oh, so I flew into North Dakota. I watched them open up for Kiss. Now we only had 30 minutes for Kiss, as we called it, 1800 seconds of pure rock and roll. So it was a cool show. But the shows, what we were doing with Kiss is on the days off we had our own gigs, so we would have to learn. I had to learn the 2-hour set. So although we only played 5 or 6 songs opening for Kiss, which were all hits, the club show was the long one. So we went into Canada. We had one rehearsal and then opened up for Kiss. It was pretty cool. It was very surreal. When I was backstage when I first got there, Gene Simmons said that I looked like Trent Reznor with Tommy Lee's arms. So that was my. And he said, Phil, okay, you look like I'm going to do. Should I do my Gene Simmons impression?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
I'll tell anyone. He said, So he said, you look like. What did he say? Oh, Trent Reznor with Tommy Lee's arm. I just completely screwed up the impression. So, but anyways, we went from that point forward. He was obsessed with my hair, and him and I had a female competition, Gene Simmons and I, every day. It was a new girl and who can outdo the girls. So what I used to do is go out and
would you compete for the affections of the same female, or was this a numbers game?
It was numbers and the same girl. I always won because I was young and hot, and he was an old guy with paint on. Now, here's the funny part. He was 50. I'm 50 now, but he was 50. He just turned 50. So technically, I just called myself an old guy. But right. Yeah, but what I would do is go out into the crowd. I would find the hottest woman in the crowd, and if she had a boyfriend, I would ask the boyfriend first. I said, "Listen, I just want to screw with Gene Simmons. Bring you guys backstage. I'll give you backstage passes. I just need to use your girl for like 5 seconds to piss Gene Simmons off." And he would always like, oh, definitely, without a doubt. So I would bring them to the side of the stage. I would have the girl stand, and this was stage right, So Gene would come over to the edge, and I would whisper in her ear, point and laugh at Gene Simmons right now. And we would both point and laugh at him, and he would go crazy, like crazy. And he's mouthing curse words at me, telling me to F off, like all kinds of stuff. It was great. And then, and it was just, we had this kind of really funny relationship over the 7 months. But he would, if I had my girlfriend out or brought a girl out that was my friend, he would try to go after her, like whisper in her ear, come with me. You don't want Phil. Come with me. It was like stuff like that. It was crazy, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was just like, as a fan, it was a dream come true. So and that's the good part about the music business.
Do you know Gene Simmons' sort of like family's Holocaust history?
I don't. No.
It's really, really insane stuff. Like his mom was in a concentration camp during the Holocaust,
right.
And his mom had to watch, I think, her whole family be walked into the gas chambers.
Oh God.
And Gene Simmons' mom was like 14 years old at the time, and apparently the way she stayed alive throughout the Second World War until it was all said and done was, and I have no idea if this in any way, shape, or form plays into what Kiss became, but she was really good with makeup. And I guess the head sort of like German officer, the guy in charge of the concentration camp, had this butt-ass ugly wife. And Gene Simmons' mom at age 14 started kind of being her personal beautician. Like, this is how we can make you look not so freaking revolting. Like, let me help you do your hair. Let me apply makeup to you. And so she stayed alive in a concentration camp throughout the Second World War by applying makeup to the wife of the guy that was in charge of gassing everyone. And Gene Simmons is an interesting guy, and you hear stories like that, and you start to get a little bit of insight into this sort of like kill or be kill attitude that he seems to have gone through life with. And it really made me sort of like stop and think a little bit more about who Gene Simmons was and how he got that way when I heard that story. It's powerful stuff.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KBRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is.
The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So you are going to want to listen to our guest Phil Varone on his radio station, Unfiltered Radio with a PH. Unfilteredradio.com is where you can do that. We've had him in the studio for a couple of days, and he's already shared a wealth of stories with us. So freaking compelling, like how you wound up being the drummer in Skid Row, being on tour with Kiss, and being in a competition for... Like you competed with Gene Simmons of Kiss in the Master Swordsman department, and I think it's a fascinating story. But so let me ask you this: this time that you spent in Skid Row, was this pre or post Sebastian Bach, or
it was
during
post.
or after Sebastian?
Well,
okay, so it was post Sebastian Bach Skid Row.
Yeah, well, in '98, when Skid Row went to South America to do the Monsters of Rock tour with Iron Maiden and Motorhead and all these great metal bands. At the time, the band was still together, Skid Row. So I actually went there with them, and I was Rob's drum tech. I had a blast, and so I was...
This is Rob, the original drummer of
Rob
Skid Row, right?
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Doesn't he live in, like, Long Island, have a wedding band and a bunch of horses now? Or am I
he
making that
does.
up?
Yeah, I believe so.
I know everything!
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's amazing. It's totally amazing. But yeah, he was in the band, and Rach said, hey, why don't you just come over to South America? It's like a paid vacation. We'll have some fun. So I went, and Baz was still in the band then. And I've known the guys. I met Sebastian in 1990 when they were in South Florida recording Slave to the Grind. So they've been my friends for years. When Baz left the band and then they kind of took a break, then they reformed the band in 2000. So it was post Sebastian and post Rob Affiso, of course.
And so when, like, what point did you stop playing drums with Skid Row? Because I'm trying to work out if I saw you or not.
2005. 2005.
So probably I didn't. I saw, like, it was my job when I was working at Sirius XM. I was living in Houston, and they had the hair metal station on there. And they're like, hey, this is not your usual gig, but up the road from you in San Antonio, there's this massive hair metal festival. Would you mind going and being the producer for this guy, legendary old school KNAC DJ, Dangerous Darren, who lives up the road in Dallas now and ironically works for Disney? Could you go sort of like produce his broadcast from this thing? And I remember there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'd never really come across there before, but I do remember seeing Skid Row play. But that was probably, did you play a hair metal festival with those guys I think it was probably closer to 2007, 2008.
Yeah, no, I was gone by then. I was in LA in 2006. So yeah.
Right. And what struck me, and I guess what I'm getting to, is there were not a lot of folks there to see Skid Row at this show, which, it kind of boggled my mind because it's like, I don't know how many millions of records they sold. I'm guessing it was probably a lot, right?
Yeah, probably about 10 plus million, I would think, altogether.
Right. And so I'm watching this happen going, I'm confident that this would be a significantly larger crowd if they had original lead singer guy back in the band. I wonder what's going on with that. And it was interesting because when Guns N' Roses managed to kiss and make up, a lot of people, I think, kind of turned to them and went, hey, seems to be something in the water at the moment. If Slash and Axl can put this behind them, what about you guys? Balls in your court. And it was absolutely not, in no way, shape, or form, no. And I think I remember Sebastian Bach saying, I don't necessarily want to do it, but I'd be willing to do it.
Yeah.
And the guys in the band being like, nope, never going to happen. We are perfectly happy playing to like 50 people a night. And I'm not trying to be unkind, but the crowd to see Skid Row at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon at this hair metal festival was not a chubby one. It was not a lot of people. And I was like, wow, what must have transpired between the band and the old singer to where, because I have to imagine life would be significantly better in so many ways if they could just kind of get it together and do some shows. Like, I would go see that. You know, I think a lot of people would.
Yeah, but, you were in a band. You know the dynamic of a band. It's you as fans, I know that I was a huge Motley Crue fan. And when Vince left the band, and when they got Krabby, Krabby is probably one of the best singers I've ever heard in my life. He's a good buddy of mine. And Krabby and that record, that Motley record, is one of my favorite with Hooligans Holidays as far as a record is concerned. But as a Motley Crue fan, Vince, I wanted Vince in the band. That's just the way it goes. So when people are used to hearing a voice or they fall in love with a band, that dynamic, and then it's no longer there, sure, the fans want to see it. However, being in a band, it just doesn't work that way sometimes. Even with Saigon Kick, we tried to do reunion stuff, and it just didn't work out. And that doesn't mean that one guy is, worse than the other. It just means that stuff is just deep and cannot be figured out. And there's not amount of money that's going to do it. There's not amount of time that's going to do it. I look at it this day. I find that in my older days now, as I'm getting up there, I find that most of the stuff is pretty petty. I know the stuff in Saigon Kick is just dumb, and I would play with those guys in 2 seconds just to have fun because it's about the fans. Some guys can't take that and won't just drop it and move on, and that's so be it. But I'm okay with that. I've gone on to better things, and I've never closed the door. So if the boys from Saigon, and I still talk to 2 of them, they're still my good friends, 30 years. There's just one guy that chooses, to have his deal, and so be it. Let him be. I don't care. It doesn't affect my life either way. However, if he came around and said, hey, do you want to play? I would play because I'm not holding grudges. The fans are there. The fans made us who we are. I think to take that from a fan is a pretty crappy thing to do. So I'm not going to do that. I'll play and have fun.
You know what came out? And it was very quiet. Not many people seemed to register or recognize, but the whole sort of the rift between Slash and Axl and Guns N' Roses, do you know what apparently it was, the straw that broke the camel's back, and why they stopped being in a band together?
No idea.
Do you remember Slash did a record with Michael Jackson back in the day?
Yeah, of course.
So, what was it? It was Black or White, right? So he did Black or White with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was a big hero of his. He grew up. This is a huge deal. This is fantastic. Axl was apparently dead against it. And here's the thing. It wasn't because, hey, this is not rock and roll. You're stepping out. You're doing things on your own. This is not, what the hell, man. What the hell? The reason why Axl asked him not to do it was because at the time, there were all these rumors floating around, which wound up being true, about Michael Jackson being wildly inappropriate with young kids.
Yeah.
And I guess Axl had a little history of that in his life.
Oh, well,
and
there you go.
Like that is, you take that step, there's no coming back, because that's really personal to me. And it's morally reprehensible that guy's a thing, and no. And so apparently the whole sort of 25 plus year break that Guns N' Roses took from being the original lineup of the band came down to Slash working with Michael Jackson and Axl having a problem with it because he was a child molester.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a lot about that. I mean, I sympathize with that in regards to that could be like a very traumatic thing. There's also a professional thing too, I find that with us in bands, I would be supportive of people who played with other people. So if there was that other, something that we didn't know about with Axl, I can see where that can rub him the wrong way. It's a shame because, the fans kind of suffered in the process. However, as a human being, he had his reasons. So,
see, I wonder about the timing of all of it too, because it was completely speculative at the time. There was, a ton of smoke and people assumed there was a certain amount of fire, but Michael Jackson kind of skated on that till even after his death. There was no kind of conclusive proof. And then I guess they sort of a few years back found some pretty damning stuff at the Neverland Ranch and went, oh yeah, all the people that he paid off were paid off for a reason, and he was doing unbelievably creepy things to kids. And I wonder that the timing of that seemed to perhaps have coincided with the time that Guns N' Roses got back together. And I wondered if maybe sort of hey, you fired me from the band on speculation, F you, 20 years go by, F you. Ooh, this happened. Turns out you were right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, now we can work together again. It's completely speculative on my part, but I did notice the timing being aligned in some ways.
Yeah, it's hard to, again, it's so hard to speak for any musicians in regards to why they do this or why they don't like that guy. It's you're living together with somebody for 20 years. You've just basically ate dirt and blood together to get a record deal, and you think your fans will be like, well, how can you leave after all that work and all that stuff? It's sometimes people just need a break. I find, this is my theory, and I'm not naming names, but I believe that if certain people in bands would just see their part in things, it would make everything a lot better. In other words, when I looked at Saigon Kick, I can point my finger 1,000 times, but I never pointed it at me. And I have to take blame for a lot of things that happen in that band as well, because I sat back or let it do it. I let this, I let that. And I can't be angry about that. I'm a 50-year-old man. I have to think about the fans and the music. So these days, there's not really much that I get mad about, unless something was done malicious against somebody, and really planned out. I think a lot of stuff that happened with Saigon Kick was we were kids, man. He's got a record deal. We're 22 years old. We don't know anything. It's the old saying, you wish you knew now what you didn't know then. It's the same thing. If I knew what I knew now when I was 22, the outcome would be completely different. But that's not the case. So to dwell on it from 25 years ago, I think is just, it's hurting yourself. I saw something on television that made total sense to me. And they were interviewing a lady who was sexually molested, raped by this person, this athlete. And she won these lawsuits and all this other stuff. And they were interviewing her, and she says, you know what? I forgive him. And they said, how can you forgive such a heinous act? She says, I'm forgiving him for me, not for him. She goes, by forgiving him, I can now, as Gary Busey told me, drop the anchor. Life is a boat. Drop the anchor, you'll sail away. If you keep the anchor, you're going to stay in one place and never move anywhere. And that's basically my theory now with the rest of my life.
Now I have to be the anchor and tell you that the show's almost up. You got like a minute left.
It is?
Here's the, yep.
Oh, so wait. Before we finish up, what happened between Sebastian Bach and the rest of Skid Row in 2 minutes? Go.
You'd have to ask them, but I have no idea. But I'll tell you this.
You actually don't know?
Well, I do know, but we talk about it on unfilteredradio.com. Yes. So they got to tune into that, to see that, because, we already did that. So after this show airs, if they tune in, they'll hear us, and they can finally hear the rest of the story. Unfilteredradio.com with a PH. Thank you very much.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
You really are 50 years old. You do know all the tricks. I got to learn some stuff off of this guy,
now.
Funkhauser. I understand why you're hitching your wagon to his ride.
Wild.
Well done. Oh, Phil Verone, this has been an absolute treat. I hope you'll come back on the show. This
Anytime.
has been a blasty blast. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, man. I had a blast.
Funkhauser, shall we play out with a little Saigon kick? What about Love is on the Way?
No.
I mean, we could. You want to?
Some of my good drumming on that.
Yeah, Phil's not on it. He's like standing around in the background with a lighter.
That's my career. The only hit I have, no drumming on it. Everyone, put your hands together.
Maybe we'd be closing out on a different song if you were willing to tell me the story behind Skid Row. Phil Verone, everybody.
Woo! I'm gonna cry.
Touch me.